And we are live on the Azure Functions webcast.
And on time.
On time. Well, yes, 11:02. We'll take it. And the best part, we didn't have to jump across streams this time. I got to remember to talk real close to this mic, though.
I know, it's our best friend for
you got to get real close on it. We tweeted the same link that we're able to broadcast from. We're here now at our Azure Functions live webcast. So welcome everyone. We're back in Redmond.
Yep.
What happened to our fancy studio?
It is, well, that studio was something. I gotta
fun?
say it. Like, I felt like, I don't know, like some of these famous shows, like I felt I was like on CNN or something, or like there was like one of those cameras that moves around like in front of us.
I don't even know what they call them. We're already getting questions too. That's good. So we're back in the podcast studio, still much nicer than when we used to do these in like the closet of Building 44 here on Microsoft campus. I'm Jeff Holland. I'm a program manager on the Azure Functions team.
Yeah, I'm Eduardo Laureano, also on the PM team for Azure Functions.
Yes, yeah. Eduardo is the man in charge of the whole boat. So some of you have already taken the chance to ask questions in chat, and that's great. Keep them coming. We're going to keep track of them here. We will have some Q&A. This is our monthly update. If you haven't joined before, we're going to go over some of the new changes, new releases, talk about some of the things that are coming, some upcoming events, some highlights from the community, and answer your questions.
Yeah, and it's a special Halloween edition.
I
as
know.
You can clearly
Look at
see.
this. Did you bring these, though?
That's my contribution for the podcast. I stole. I don't think my wife will be happy because I just stole from our house and brought it here, but...
But we're festive because even the title of the webcast has the nice emoji too of a jack-o'-lantern. Nice, so nice. I know we know how to celebrate. We know how to celebrate. All right, we'll jump right into it then. Let's go ahead and start with what's new. So there some kind of tidying up stuff. Like obviously Ignite was a big deal.
That was huge. Like I think was even better than we anticipated in some ways. Like we knew, of course, the product team were trying to find the right time to release 2.0, like product quality and whatnot, and the right event, and landed perfectly at the Ignite. Was like, okay, we're gonna be ready. There was obviously tons of people working hard and to make it happen for Ignite, but it landed right then and there, and collapsed with a bunch of other announcements that were coming too, like Signal R was coming live.
That's right.
That was cool. There was stuff happening on the DevOps front that also aligned the same time. So I think all in all, it was a great conference for developers and IT pros. Like they got a lot of goodies out of Microsoft. For sure.
And it has made it so there's a little bit of a less what's new this month, but we still have some goodies and some stuff actually that this community has asked for a lot. So if you go to the GitHub, there's github.com/Azure/app service announcements, and there's a hyphen between each one of those words. App service announcements. We are rolling out right now an update to version 2, which is now generally available. Yep. So no breaks.
No breaks.
Just some tweaks. There were some settings we tweaked with App Insights. There were some other very minor bugs, but you can go see all the release notes there, and also a release for V1, and same idea, kind of fit and finish. Don't worry, nothing crazy is coming to V2. We're just kind of keeping the wheels turning.
Yeah, I think it's worth calling out, like obviously with Ignite was big set of features, and we recapped on the previous webcast. If you haven't checked, that's one that's worth checking out.
Last one was huge, an hour long.
Hour long with rich
Fabio,
demos of what's coming with Fabio there with us. And now I think there's going to be a lot of work that we'll do to get the feedback and things that we wanted to work on the reliability, scalability front that we're going to tackle like the end of the year now that probably we didn't do it before, but now it's the right time to do it.
The other thing that's new, which I want to highlight, especially for this community, actually has to do with how we target frameworks in CSharp Function. So if I actually switch over to my screen, no, not that screen. Hold on, it's mirroring my displays. It is that screen, but let me just sort this out really quick. If we switch over to my screen in a second, let's see if there's an easy way for me to move here. In the past, one of the common asks we've got, look at this. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so in the past, one of the common asks that we've got and complaints is that if you would have noticed actually up here, we used to say that we targeted .NET Standard, and that's true. Like if I was to create a project in V2 and I opened up the CS proj file, which I'll do for you now so that you can see, we would actually target .NET Standard 2.0. If you're not familiar in the .NET world, it gets a little bit confusing.
It did, yeah, because we made all this announcement to say, hey, we're now on .NET Core,
yep.
and you would go on Visual Studio and you're like, but doesn't seem like I can truly target it. So that was probably one of the biggest feedback we got right off the gate with 2.0.
Yes, for sure. And like, there's so many different flavors of .NET. There's Mono, there's Xamarin, there's .NET Core, even I think universal Windows apps. And so .NET Standard is an idea to say, like, here's the APIs that work across everything. But sometimes you build libraries or you need APIs that are specific to just one of those. And people would have issues when they wanted to build like a .NET Core class library and reference it from a function, because it would complain at you and say, hey, I'm .NET Standard. I don't know if I can speak .NET Core. So we did the work to update all the templates. So you'll notice I created just the default template. We now target NetCore app 2.1, so you can very easily reference in and out of 2.1 dependencies. And this should just work fine now. So that's one nice update that we have rolled out. You should see that in your Visual Studio experience today. That should make a lot of people happy.
Yeah, and talking about feedback too, some of this feedback we got, we released a blog post with our 2.0 release. There is probably over like 40 different pieces of feedback. Some people just congratulating us on the release, but truly like good discussions. People asking, you know, about bindings on 2.0, they're asking about how to target .NET Core. So it's great to see the engagement through the blog post. So
agree.
Keep the feedback coming.
And there is, like, we kind of cleared up the thing with .NET Standard in some ways, I guess is my poor explanation. Is there is one more thing I see a lot of confusion around, understandably so, which is like, what's the relationship between that target framework setting I just set, NetCore App 2.1, this NuGet package right here that says, you know, the Azure Functions SDK, which right now is like version 1.0.23. Then there's the version of the runtime, which right now is like 2.0.1136. And so there's a lot of confusion on like which version of the Azure Functions runtime am I actually using. So I do want to spend a second while we're talking about this feature to clear that up, because I've seen a lot of confusion. So this package here, the SDK, all its job is to do, more or less, oversimplifying things, is build your function project in the right way for all of the pieces to be there. So when you build an Azure Function project, it's a little bit different than a regular .NET project, because we need things like a function.json file. You have all your attributes that it needs to understand and package it up in a Azure Function app. So this SDK right here, its job is to say, hey, which version of Azure Functions are they targeting? What framework are they targeting? And then generating the build. I can use this same NuGet package and same version for both version 1 and version 2. And it has the smarts to know, am I building for version 1 or am I building for version 2? So one important thing to note, if you go to an old project right now and you change this target framework setting to NetCore 2.1, and you don't update this NuGet package, you'll probably still get errors, because this thing is the thing that has the smarts to know, hey, this is okay to target 2.1. Now separately, once you've built it, it's running the Azure Functions runtime. Now the Azure Functions runtime in Visual Studio is managed automatically for you. If you're not using Visual Studio, if you're using VS Code, it's managed through either like NPM or Brew or Chocolatey. That version is completely independent from both of these. That's just the version of the runtime that's going to be running. In Visual Studio, that's stored inside of your local app data for your user profile. And Visual Studio does its job to keep that up to date all the time. You can go dig into that if you want. I won't give you the file link right now, but I did want to clear that up in terms of like, if I'm writing a 2.0 function, why do I see this 1.0 SDK? And how does that relate to some of the project settings? So hopefully that was more clear than it was confusing, but it's something I've seen a bit of confusion about in the past.
Very cool.
The only other update in terms of what's new before we go to some community highlights that Eduardo has, durable JavaScript. So we've talked a lot about durable functions in the past. Yep. Actually, this is a nice segue. I don't know if you have this one ready. You might not. Yep. We also have durable functions for JavaScript. It's in preview right now. It's pretty slick, and the the status and quality of it is really high. To the point where we're just releasing right now a new NPM package. So there's like a durable functions JavaScript package that you download on NPM. There's a new one rolling out very shortly, and it pretty much has complete feature parity with the C# durable functions. So that is one that I wanted to highlight. There's a release going on that front, and stay in tune to that. And also, if you haven't tried the durable JavaScript functions before and you're interested, now is a really great time to start with this latest release.
Yep, no, that's a great one coming.
So on that, actually, Eduardo and I, because you know, we're kind of giving some of these smaller updates, we did want to spend some time in this webcast and highlight some work in the community. Yep. So Eduardo has actually been pulling together some of the blog posts that we've been sharing around as a team. And you've got a few here to show even.
Yeah, so let me, actually, before we do this, let me do my, I can switch to my commercial break here. So, you know, it's a special podcast today because it's Halloween. It's Jeff's birthday. Happy birthday, Jeff.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Wow.
It's funny. I didn't tell anyone at work it was my birthday.
And you came to work on your birthday.
How did you know?
I can't tell you my
secrets.
You
get an email as a manager that's like it's someone's birthday?
No, it was someone on the team. It starts with letter O, but I won't give it.
That's fine. Yeah, so I was I came in here and I was like, I haven't mentioned it to anyone. No one will know. Yep. And then here's this nice surprise. So thank you, Eduardo.
Yeah. So
there is, and I scheduled this webcast too. So I was the one who chose, and I knew at the time, October 25th, I was like, this is my birthday. And I'm just saying that because there is nothing I would rather be doing on my birthday than showing up to work and doing this live webcast, and hopefully the glowing comments in the chat section that are not trashing the product will make it worth spending my birthday this way.
If you're there listening to the webcast, make sure to tweet Jeff the happy birthday. He will appreciate his phone like really blowing up with tweets.
I'm starting to get to the spot where like birthdays are more like, oh crap, I'm getting really old now, instead of like, oh yes, I'm like, you know, I'm a real adult now. So we're getting there.
But look, hey, we had a big release ahead of your birthday, so that's good.
Right, exactly. I feel like birthday came early in September of Ignite. So,
all right.
But with that, thank you for joining our commercial break. Back to our regular scheduled programming. So, Eduardo, community blog posts.
Let's show a few. So that's one thing we want to do in this webcast is if you blog about functions and you know, and something that use the product, make sure to tag us on Twitter as we pick them up. We'll show some of them here, and anyone in the community that's writing a blog post we can show, but I just picked a few that caught our attention. So this one's from Jasmine. I thought it was pretty cool that she was doing things that sometimes can be, you know, a little tedious or you can just forget to do, which is to write your release notes as part of your releases, right, on GitHub. So she made this to be nice and friendly and just gather automatically your release notes for you based on what's included on your pull request. So that's the blog post goes through it. And what's also cool is it's a real nice intro level for you if you're not used to functions and you just want to see it used in a real scenario. That kind of shows how to accomplish that with functions. So I thought it was pretty neat, and we can share the links. I think we've tweeted from the functions account. Another one.
Oh, yeah, I have the links here, so I'll paste those into the chat window while you do it. And the other one on that one too, just a quick note. This is actually one that for those of you who might have been around when I was doing the Logic Apps webcast, one of the big complaints we got was we would do releases for Logic Apps like every 2 weeks, similar to how we do with functions, and we didn't have release notes. So actually a developer on our team who now is actually on the Azure Functions team, Mitrin, wrote an Azure function at the time that would go through and do release notes automatically for us that we could then post to our customers.
So we can't.
I know, he didn't blog at the time, but this was like 2 years ago. So I thought it was cool. It really is a super valuable scenario that even we've used for our own products to use functions to do some of those tasks.
Yeah, no, that is definitely neat. The other one is we talk a lot, especially in this webcast. We cover .NET. We just did for the .NET project, but we see a lot of growth on JavaScript usage for functions. So it's always great to see the community kind of like highlighting how to get the most out of JavaScript Azure Functions. So this and another one's a good one from Ahmad of JavaScript Azure Functions. There are tons of details that if you're just beginner on it, it will be able to walk you through all that you need to do to get started with VS Code, with nice little animated GIFs that you can really see what's going on.
Yeah,
so
the quality of this blog post is unreal, honestly, when I was looking through it. Like those high quality GIFs.
Look at all those emojis. Yeah, no, it's good stuff and very practical, which is love those blog posts that walks you through slowly, kind of like it's almost like a tutorial. Like I want to learn the concepts. You can just keep scrolling down and following through alongside what he's done here. So cool stuff. Thanks, Ahmad, for writing that. And another one from also our great CDA. So Sarah and Maxime wrote this one on durable functions, and talks about durable function, another concept that some people might be familiar with functions but not durable. So they go through the fan in, fan out pattern, which is one that's really hard to accomplish if you don't have something like durable functions. Yep. So they go through the motions on how to accomplish that, and there's just some
more speaking
animation.
Of exactly. Speaking of really high quality GIFs, this is some very cool stuff. Can you play it again too? I think if you click rerun right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love this. So, yep, you start off with the orchestra. I just love this stuff. I geek out on it. Shows how it fans out, runs all your independent functions, and then fans back in. And Max has also done a series of blogs, both on .NET and for JavaScript, talking about some of the cool projects he's done around parsing GitHub repos, doing some other cool stuff at massive scale. So if you're not already following Max and Sarah on Twitter or on these blogs, very highly recommend. I saw Max is actually watching right now, and he waved in the chat. So waving back, Max. Thanks a ton.
Max.
Honestly, very cool stuff from the community in that regard as well.
All right, that's what I had on blog posts. And again, keep sending them to us, and we'll highlight them on future webcasts too, so all the community knows about the cool work you're all doing.
And we do, honestly, as a team, we pass these around. It's one of the ways we get feedback, where it's, hey, someone wrote this blog, here's a cool scenario, here's some feedback they had. So it's another way to kind of get the word out that you're doing cool stuff with functions, but also get in contact with us. So.
And we love even when they highlight things that, hey, this was a little bit hard to do, or I couldn't do this, because we read those blog posts and we're like, oh, how can we make that scenario easier to be accomplished? So feel free to also point out things that, it's not as easy to do.
And we actually do. We almost need to pause here for a very serious question in chat, which is we have been saying GIFs and not GIFs, which is I will tell you this. I was adamant that it was GIF because that's how I initially read it. And the whole argument of, well, the person who created the format calls it GIF or GIF. It wasn't until actually at Channel 9 that Scott Hanselman gave me the hardest time for calling it GIFs or GIFs that I decided, you know what, I think the battle's been lost. I think it's now officially GIF. The masses have decided that this is how it's pronounced.
See, I never caught the GIF wave.
Really?
I started on the GIF wave and
like when you first read it the first time, you're like, this is a GIF?
This is a GIF.
It might have been at school or something, but I've learned. And yeah, one of those changes, just like I'm trying to get guys out of my vocabulary, I'm never going to say GIF either.
I did call JPG before.
Oh, yeah, I've done that too. Yeah, like a .jpg
and then
file.
Someone's like,
yeah, this is JPEG.
Yeah.
Or I saw a lot of people I know we're on a second commercial break. Hang tight for 5 seconds.
It's your birthday.
The Amazon show.
About,
the Amazon show with John Krasinski. The whatever the spy show. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
Office.
Yeah, come on, man. It's that guy, but he's in like the spy thriller thing. Whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in that
Jack
show.
Ryan?
Jack, look at you, Jack Ryan. Oh, they're one of our sponsors. Amazon Prime is. Anyway, he says SQL constantly in that show. Like I wrote an SQL query, and it makes me cringe every time he says it because I'm like, no, it's SQL.
I don't think he ever wrote one, but yeah.
Yes. And we'll have to take this for the next webcast, which is now they want us to discuss tabs and spaces. So we'll have to park it right there and go back to our webcast. So we do have a few more things to plug. Talking about community, this is actually a good segue into that. One of the cool projects that we've actually worked with the community to build that we haven't had a chance to give a lot of love to, I'm showing right now on my screen. This is the Azure Serverless Community Library. We've had some awesome contributions from the community, both in the templates that are here, but also into the design of the website itself. Like the Sarah Drasner, who I guess we've given her enough love on this in every webcast, who wrote those GIFs that we showed earlier, actually helped us get this really polished design. There's other people like Anthony created this OpenAPI LPR example to do license plate reading. This is a really good resource to share out, serverlesslibrary.net. But it's also one, and the reason I wanted to show it too, is that you can all contribut to this as well.
And I should say, this was started by Jeff King, and he did like
that's right.
Brilliant work on collecting those things. All we did was like, how can we get sort of more eyes on it and maintain this like in a fully supported way? So we still wanted the spirit to be the same. It's community driven. So any of you that want to write your code as you blog and you want to put it somewhere that's easy for people to find and for them to deploy to Azure, contribute. So there's a contributors guide that makes it super easy. It's pretty much like one file that you have to do on your your repo, and you're off the races kind of thing. But we want to give you an avenue to put your code in there for others to leverage. So that's sort of the purpose. We want to keep that spirit. We want to make this as lightweight as possible on the contributor side, as well as in people using that. So yeah, it's something I love this thing.
It's good work, and there's some, even I just like, if you were giving a presentation on functions, like there's some really cool demos in here. Like this tug of war one is one that I've seen a lot around, where this will give you a nice website where people can vote on things, and they'll kind of be like a real-time tug of war powered by Azure Functions. I mentioned the license plate reading, and then some of the basic just like hello world examples. So both use this as a resource, but if you go build something cool, if you build something that others might care about, contribute it, share it with the community. This project really, to your point, with Jeff King, Sarah Drasner, it's been built up from the community to begin with. We want to keep it that way. And we are going to be doing work on our side too to surface these community templates more in the development experience across our development experiences as well. So it's a cool tool that we haven't given enough love on this webcast yet.
And Colby like really embraced it. So if you have any feedback, send it to Colby.
Yeah, Colby
and Faz, they're working hard on making this a real nice experience. So
yeah, really good work there. So wanted to highlight that. So with that, we'll actually pause. We wanted to talk about a few events that are coming up, some of the places that we're traveling, but I think we'll actually do some Q&A first. Okay. So I'm going to switch over here to my Q&A tab, which I have right here. So a few questions. Here's the biggest one. And Eduardo, I'll do kind of what I did last time. I'll ask the question, then you can either answer it or just say, I'll let you take this one. Happy birthday, buddy. What's the current status of dependency injection in V2? When can we expect a preview?
So if you've seen the previous webcast, that's when Fabio
the last month one,
where Fabio gave a sneak peek. And he gave a sneak peek because he was feeling pretty confident that we're sort of on the final stretch to release that one. So with that Fabio here to commit, I can commit on his behalf. So I think still coming like this year is probably
that's the goal.
Soon, right?
Yep. We've been on even about 2 weeks ago. He sent out a mail to the team with like, here's the scoped design. Here's the design we're going to go with. Here's what we're going to do. Like we definitely have a lot on our plate still. Like we want to make sure that we're focusing on if there's high impact bugs or anything else, like that's going to take priority. So we're not promising, but the goal is still the end of the calendar year. We'll have that preview out.
The calendar,
okay. Next question. Oh,
now just talking about what's coming. In case we forget, like we talked about durable JavaScript, but I just want to remind people we're in the final stretch of having like our Java support to hit general availability.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't tell you when we're going to announce, but it's soon.
Yes.
So if you have any feedback and you're using Java, this is the perfect time to send it to us. We're really like just polishing like end of the road on that one.
It's one of those things like even V2 GA, like before Ignite, anyone who followed our GitHub repo, they saw the commits we were making. We removed beta tags. They were like, okay, it's coming. If you pay attention to Maven in the next day or two, similar.
Don't give it away.
Whatever. We're in the final stretches. Release candidate style releases at this point. Okay, I'll skip that one for now. This is a good one. Is run from zip or run from package recommended?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, official names run from package. Actually, someone did a nice little drawing of run from package on the team, which I thought was good. We should create that as an icon. They did really like a guy running from a package.
Oh, run from package. It's like when I get my tax documents, run from package. I like it.
Yeah. But joking aside, run from package, to recap, it's a feature that prevents, especially if you have a large application, for us to do a bunch of I/O and accessing the file system all the time. And especially in a situation where you have distributed storage, you want to prevent those I/Os from happening. So really cool, neat feature that allows for us to sort of mount all your application content and be accessing it and keep as much in memory as possible. So. Yep. So real nice feature. And we talked about it Ignite in case you didn't see the session I did with Fabio. I think we went through and demoed it. But to answer the question, we recommend you use it. And actually the tooling, if you go and just deploy through Visual Studio Code and some of the Visual Studio, the tooling will do it for you. But you can pick to use it directly yourself if you want. There's documentation on it. There's two working modes. One where you can keep your files in wherever you want, like let's say blob storage or some other place, or you can move your files inside of your sort of application folder. We create a D drive where you can drop your content there, so you can drop your application there. So you can configure it both ways, but ideally you would just use it through the tooling, so you don't have to worry about configuring it manually yourself.
And part of the question, like I know at least a week ago, it was opt-in for Visual Studio. So like if I right-click publish, there'd be a checkbox there, which used to be called run from zip. Now it says run from package. Always click that yes, but even on that, we just met with the Visual Studio team about a week ago. In an upcoming release, I don't know when it will land, that'll just be clicked on by default. So it will be opt out. We wanted to make sure we had some time to make sure all the kinks were worked out before we made it default, but it is now the default. So you should always click that. So very good question. So here's a question which I'll do my best to answer, or Eduardo can. So V2 no longer targets .NET Standard, it only targets .NET Core. I'm confused. Understandably so. It is kind of a confusing world that even Eduardo and ourselves have had to do. I guess I could test this out really quick. I believe you can target both with the function library now. It can handle both .NET Standard 2.0 or NetCore 2.1, because there may be worlds where maybe you are referencing something that's .NET Standard. The important thing to note, though, is when we run it in the cloud, when we execute your function, we are going to be using .NET Core 2.1. So you definitely can't use a library that isn't supported by .NET Core 2.1. But when it comes to like referencing libraries and all that fun stuff, I believe you should still be fine with .NET Standard 2.0. But again, I can't even claim that I fully understand the state of the .NET Standard versus Core versus everything else thing.
Well, one segue into that is we kept telling people, hey, use V2 because that's, our upcoming engineering efforts are going to come to V2. So we recommend all of you to use. But we did get, even on the blog post comments, folks are like, oh, but I still need V1 because the library I use is a library that doesn't exist. .NET Core is not quite there yet. So if you have such examples, like it's good for us to know what they are. Yes. I remember the particular case I remember was a particular version of Anti-Framework that was being used. So as you have issues, concerns of moving to V2, hit us up, let us know. We want to collect those we want as many people to be able to move to V2 as possible. So
absolutely, so and that is coming up more. It came up yesterday too, is people are kind of like, hey, I want to move to V2. You might get blocked sometimes, and that's okay. Let us know because it helps us understand what might be preventing people, but also we can work closely with the .NET team and say, hey, here's some stuff people are running into. So another question which you kind of answered, which is just if you want to use run from zip or run from package, am I still responsible for zipping it up and putting it in its storage? And the answer is no. The tooling's going to do it for you now. It's across VS Code, Visual Studio. VS Code may still require you set an app setting to use website run from package. I know they're using the zip deploy pipeline to get it there. I'll need to confirm that. But either way, the tooling is doing this automatically for you. That's mostly a note for me. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Is there a good blog on how to tune the internals of Azure Durable Functions? That's a really good question. The closest we have, probably the most advanced content I would guess that we have on a public forum is the presentation that I did at .NET Conf that I noticed someone was just tweeting about today. I think Cecil was from the .NET team. However, I don't go much into tuning, so that's a good thing. There's actually a gap there if somebody wants to write that. In terms of, there's a lot of host.json files for durable functions. You can have different task hubs. There's you can definitely just stick with the vanilla durable functions and get really far, but we do give you a lot of knobs to turn, and we haven't really written much in terms of like, here's the optimal, or here's the trade-offs this way or the other. So that's a gap right now that we should look into. Both a community call out if someone wants to do that, and also just a mental note for us. Okay, we're doing okay on time, so let's answer a few more. Serious question is how this one was prefaced. Is there, I haven't even read the question yet. Hopefully I don't regret. Is there, and props, by the way, shout out to Oded, who isn't in the room with us today, but he's actually keeping us afoot with all these questions. We love you, Oded. You're always in our hearts. Sorry I ran out of the building today before you could come with us. Okay, serious question. Are there any plans to support Azure Functions scaling more granularly? Like if I had one function that I really don't want to run more than X instances. I know singleton, like there's an attribute singleton, but it's too limited.
Oh. So some people ask, I don't know if that's the same ask, some people ask the question in the sense of, I don't want to run too many concurrent instances of functions because I use some resource which can't have this many connections to you, like let's say a SQL database or something that you want to limit that, or I heard someone that was connecting to Dynamics and they're going to be throttled if you're trying to connect.
Sure, like requests per second or whatever limits they might have.
So that request we did here, and something that we have in our roadmap. I don't have a timeline, but something we definitely want to get to give you that control. So if you have something that your function is talking to, you're not sort of exhausting that resource or sort of putting more load than what you need. So that's something we're thinking about. I don't know if that covers the requirement.
It should, and there are. This is a very common question for one, and it is something like even Eduardo and I and the team throughout the last few weeks, we've been kind of post V2GA, making sure that our plans are all good. This is one of the items that is absolutely on like our top 10, top 5. Like this is a big one we're going to put effort into over the coming weeks and months. Like I don't know when it's going to land. Hopefully sooner than later. That said, though, there are a few settings you can do today. So we have one is so there's two parts of this. You have different instances, so like my instance here, and it scales out. But on an instance, there can be multiple executions in parallel at the same time. If you want to control the concurrency for a specific instance, the host.json file gives you all the config you need. You could say, hey, I only want to handle whatever one queue message on one instance at one time, or I want to handle 60 queue messages on one instance at one time. So that gives you some control at the instance level. For the number of instances, there is one app setting, and it's called like website max instance scale out. It's in our app setting document. It will allow you to set the limit for how many instances we scale out to. However, and there'll be some disclaimers on the docs, it's not perfect. In fact, it's only really bankable if you're doing a number like 5 or less. So if you're okay with a number like scale out to 5 or less, that setting will work for you fine now. There's some complexities, and like once we start scaling you out really far, there's different people fighting for different things. So if you do a number like 30, it's very possible we may not honor that number as cleanly as we want to, but that's part of the work we want to do. We want to make that so like I can say, I want 32.16 instances, and we will respect that. Maybe not the 0.16, but good question. This one related to the same. Lots of questions on run from package. We should probably write a more comprehensive doc on this. I know we have one. What's faster, running from package using app service storage or running from package using external storage?
You should definitely try to put the storage on app service itself, so we don't have to go, because what's going to happen when you put that storage somewhere, there's going to be at least one time that we need to bring that content back down to your apps. From that point on, we can, as you need more VMs, the data is already in app service, so the other VMs can leverage it, but there's going to be that first time where you're going to have to hit up storage, right? So, or wherever you put your content. So yeah, app service would be the one who would recommend. So put it there if you're doing it manually. Looks like a lot of people are trying to feature manually. So I would say try the tooling. If the tooling doesn't work, you can do it manually. But like the previous question said, like you'd have to zip it up and
stick it in a storage account, right?
Storage account, change the app setting and all that. So hopefully try the tooling, see if the tooling can automate that for you.
Correct. And to even just to double down on that, the tooling today, like VS Visual Studio Code, the one, or I said that weird, they will use the app service storage method automatically today. There's called a zip deploy API endpoint on your app service. That's how they're going to upload your package. So the only way to do the external storage one, at least for all the public offerings today, is if you manually copied it into storage yourself. So if you're not manually copying it, if you're just checking the checkbox, you're already using the one that has just a slightly smaller hop between file and mounting. Last question here, and then we'll talk about some of the events. We've got a number of viewers still, so you guys have stuck around. This makes me think Q&A is valuable, so I'm not gonna shorten it. This one's from Darren. Any updates on the Azure Functions premium plan and how soon it will be in preview? So I guess I'll take this chance to plug the private preview one more time. I actually, oh, someone already posted the link. Oded must have done this, I think, because I see a forms link here. So again, props to Oded. Yep, this is the link to it. It's still in private preview. We're running through a deployment right now. Even those of you who might be watching who are in the private preview, you might have gotten a mail from me recently too. We have a deployment with some fixes and updates to it rolling out right now in our app service release cadence. That should complete in the next week or so. So there's going to be a new wave of private preview starting in the next week or so. So this is a great time to sign up. Because we're still waiting to see how all the private preview lands, I can't really say when the public will come, but as soon as it's good and everyone in the private preview says it's good, we'll make it public. So sign up now. We've had a big response, which is great, but we still have room to have more. Like we can whitelist a number of more people. So if you haven't already signed up, still sign up. Even I think there's a part where it's like entering why you're interested. Mention that you watched the webcast and maybe we'll bump you up even higher. So that's that question. So I think that's all of the questions, at least that I've had pasted. Go ahead. Yeah.
Another plug there is, like Jeff said, Premium's one that we're waiting for the current release that's going on and finishes early November, first week of November. What's coming that release, in case you've been tuned in, we're doing is stuff that Matthew Henderson demoed at Ignite, which is the Key Vault integration, which is really cool. It's actually our #1 user voice request for the longest time. So that's another feature that's going to be available worldwide as part of this deployment that we're doing. So it's an exciting one. So you don't need to keep your secrets on app settings or connection strings if you don't want to. You can stick them on Key Vault and make a reference to them from the functions. So functions or app service itself doesn't know about your secret. Now you can manage them in a single place with Key Vault. So yeah, so check that out. I think we're gonna probably blog and send some tweets about it once it's fully live to everyone.
For sure, absolutely. That's a big one.
Just so you know, this is coming in the very soon time frame.
And I just one more plug, I guess we did a better job this time giving the community some love. I just was checking out the chat to make sure we didn't miss anything. And there's one more question that we can briefly answer before we wrap up. Awesome job in the chat too. Like Max, a bunch of people from the community. Like there's some good discussion here, answering questions, sharing some cool ideas. I see some stuff about GraphQL. I see some stuff about, I need to manage concurrent connections to SQL. Really good conversation, and I'm glad that this is one forum for you all to interact as well. So good job on that. We might answer one more question. If anyone has more, throw them in. We'll do one last batch. But for that, let's plug some events that are coming up, some of the places we're traveling as a team, or that we know we're going to have some representation. So Eduardo.
All right. So a few things are coming. If you're on the East Coast, there's a Serverless New York City, which is part of Serverless Days, a series of events, from what I understand. So that should be a good one. Got a lot of momentum quickly this conference, which was cool. And I feel like we've done events in a bunch of places, but not a whole lot on the East Coast. There was one in Toronto actually, but in general, there's tons of global events. So it's good to have one in New York. And we have our own
Savary and Max
are there. So if you're on that conference, make sure to check out their talks. I don't want to make any spoilers, or I'm pretty sure Max will talk about durable functions.
Who knows? And what a cooler place to be on Halloween, which it's October 30th, but Halloween's the next day, than New York City. Like this is downtown New York. So, book a ticket, go check them out.
Awesome. The other one we have is we try to do this more where we're not only in serverless conferences. We're trying to be where the community is adopting serverless. So DevVox is one of those where you have tons of Java developers and open source developers there, and we're going to have one talk that will cover serverless at DevVox. Jeff, as part of his birthday, he wanted a lot of chocolate.
That's all I asked for.
No better place than Belgium for that. So Jeff will be there with Bruno from our CDA community, Java expert, and they'll be talking about serverless and Java. So that should be another good one for those that are in Europe.
And and two, I'm trying to set it up right now, but there'll probably be some Azure user groups or other user groups around Belgium that I'm going to help with during that week too. So if you are around Belgium or can get there or have customers there, feel free to hit me up. I'm more than happy to make the time while I'm in the area. I always want to do that when we can be in the same room together. Let's figure out a way to make it happen.
Awesome. Okay, and then in terms of Microsoft moments, I mean, we had Ignite, and everybody knows next year we're going to have Build. But before that, the last big sort of Microsoft-wide conference of the year is Microsoft Connect. It's the idea is a developer conference from dev to dev. So we're going to have Scott Guthrie, Scott Hanselman, and they're going to be doing demos and going to be sort of very developer type of thing, open source, and all the other things we do, different communities. So that should be a good one. I'm sure we're going to have some serverless in there.
That's right.
And that's one we're excited about. There's a lot of it happens online actually. So if you want to join, you can just join from wherever you are and follow what's happening.
Yep. Yeah. There will be like a live presence. I don't even know if they announced the location. But most of it's a digital conference anyway. So if you're interested, mark your calendars December 4th. It's going to be all day. There'll be a keynote from Scott Guthrie, a keynote from Scott Hanselman, bunch of live streams from like Jeff Fritz. And we'll be helping out with this as well. So you'll see some familiar faces during that week. The only other, so we'll wrap up with some more questions because there's a few more. One of them, I guess there's two. Tiago asked this, which is recently, if you follow me on Twitter, and please follow me on Twitter, I did a poll around content. Around what type of content you would like to see specifically. And it was good. We got retweeted by a few people, so we got a really good response. I want to say almost 1,000 people responded. And it was kind of like, hey, for you in the community, what type of training is the most valuable? For context, we had actually worked to book the studio here in Channel 9 for like 15 hours. And I was potentially thinking about doing a course where it was like almost kind of Pluralsight-esque, where it was like, here's Azure Functions from the get-go to the end, but all kind of video content. So it would be like you'd have to put up with what you've had to put up with the last 40 minutes for 6+ hours. But as we got closer to it, and as things like Microsoft Learn were coming out, we started to be like, you know what, is this the best type of content that's either the most shareable, the most consumable? And so we wanted to know, like, I am very much willing, and the team is willing, to set aside our time to put together some really high quality content. And we have great partnerships here in Channel 9. We have amazing CDAs, an awesome Microsoft Learn team. We have the resources to do some high production quality. But I want to make sure, you know, if I'm going to spend 30 hours of my time building something, we do it in a way that makes the most impact.
Exactly, yeah.
And what I heard, and I'm kind of validating this right now, that the Microsoft Learn format of things is probably the best. Like, almost take that 6-hour content, but instead of doing it in a video, turn it into 20 Microsoft Learn modules. Yeah. And those could be digestible either from like step 15 on, or you could start from the beginning. So if you wanted the guided learning, it's there. A lot more hands-on, like I get to go in the sandbox and actually build things too. So that's kind of what I heard, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm more than happy to help with that. So I actually have some meetings next week with the Microsoft Learn team to help get some really high-quality content out there. But I mentioned that both to confirm what I heard, to make sure that that would be valuable, but also if you have any other ideas, if there's other type of content that's useful to you or to those who you want to get excited about functions, let us know. Like, we really want to put some effort into doing that.
Awesome. I forgot one conference, if you don't mind switching back. So we used to have, for those of you familiar with our conference, we used to have the Tech Summit, and now they got rebranded as Ignite the Tour, but similar idea where probably a little bit more technical this time and a little bit more dev-driven too, but same idea of having sort of your favorite topics in different cities around the world. So you should have a location that's close to you. It literally goes around the world starts in December, goes all the way through May. So real nice opportunities. CDA product teams, they go and speak to you at your location. So those are good ones.
Very cool.
These pictures are beautiful. I think they only pick like beautiful locations.
I was going to say Sao Paulo. Is that did you stop on that one on purpose?
That's in Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if that's on your calendar already. All right. See. But I won't talk about my favorite Brazilians. I've made that mistake in the past. I love them all. Okay, so honestly, there was one or two more questions. We still have a really healthy number of viewers. Hopefully this is the kind of webcast that you can put on in the background. We try to keep this pretty informal. I think people appreciate that. It's almost like a podcast format. So, but I'll answer the last question I saw just because we do have people still watching. Someone asked about Troy Hunt and his blog post and tweets about Azure Functions. That's what we're doing. And he's honestly done a really good job kind of explaining himself what happened here. But he tweeted, well, I guess the full story here. Back 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Saturday morning, I got a ping on my phone that said somebody just tweeted at Azure Functions. And I usually get alerts whenever you tag at Azure Functions or at Jeff Holland. And it was Troy Hunt, and he's like, hey, sorry to everyone who's using Have I Been Pwned. I had a hiccup with my Azure Functions. I'm getting everything up and running. So right away, I hurried and jumped on Twitter, and I was like, hey, Troy, let me know if I can help. So he sent me a DM, and he was like, yeah, here's my app. It just stopped. Like, one of my apps stopped working. I swapped slots, and things seemed to be good, but I don't know why my app stopped working. So I worked with him a little bit, and pretty clear, it was easy to see what had happened is there was a data breach with like 1.5 million records. And the way he had it set up is that he would drop these 1.5 million records for all the breaches on a queue. And a few things would happen. He would go notify Mozilla because there's integration with Have I Been Pwned with Mozilla. He would notify his own service, which can you can sign up for alerts so that if your email address shows up in a data breach, you'll get an email that's like, by the way, your email just showed up. So he'll go send some of that off too. And what happened is that he dropped that 1.5 million records in the queue, and awesomely enough, Azure Functions scaled really, really good on that queue and started hammering Mozilla's APIs with all of the breach details. Mozilla started to tip over a little bit. The request times got really long. Things started getting bottled up a bit. And what ended up happening, which caused things to kind of tilt to the downside, is he exhausted his connection limits. So in Azure Functions consumption plan today, you are limited to 300 active outbound TCP connections at one time per instance. Now, he had scaled out to tons of instances, so he wasn't just limited to 300 connections to Mozilla. He was 300 times the number of instances he'd scaled out to, but some of his instances got into that bad state, a number of them, and they ended up saying, hey, you crossed this limit, it times you out for a little bit, and then starts you up later. So a few things from that. One, there are best practices in how to use HTTP connections, specifically making sure you're using that static instantiation pattern, that once he makes that change, he'll be much more efficient with his connections. The other one too, though, which he mentioned in his blog post, that same release that we've kind of been teasing with Key Vault and Premium Functions updates, it also bumps the limit from 300 to 600. So our hope is that the number of people who've hit this in the past, we know, again, Max has hit this in the past with some of his durable stuff, Troy hit this. We're hoping that 600 limit's going to get people in the clear, that between our aggressive scale out and that limit, you'll be fine. But even that said, if you're hitting issues with that, if you're following best practices and that's giving you problems, let us know, because now we're more than willing to continue to tweak that. We've done the work to make that configurable. So that's what happened. He was able to resolve it both by improving his code, but also knowing that this is the behavior and the fact that, in all honesty, and I dug into his telemetry, if the limit would have been 600, he would have been fine. He was floating right around 350. So if he would have had 600, just the scale out would have made him fine anyway. So good question on that.
Well, what's interesting is after we conclude this change and we go to 600, if you're using the best practices like Jeff alluded to, you're still hitting those limits, it's worth you letting us know because we can still analyze whether we can tweak that number
Yep.
Again if we need to.
Perfect. Should we do one more? You have time? We're almost at another hour.
Let's do the last
questions
one,
come. Let's see if the viewership is even gonna. It looks like a few people have left, which is fine. A few people are still there. So one, someone has around 30 functions doing a bunch of stuff, and they're wondering if they can have one dashboard to give them a global overview of all of this stuff that's happening. So App Insights definitely is the best. You can both correlate across App Insights instances. So if you have multiple App Insights instances, you can correlate them all in a single dashboard. Or you could push all 30 of those functions to the same App Insights instance. You could do either one. That's a great option. That's what I'd recommend. Especially things like the app map will actually build a lot of this dashboard for you now. So just make sure you're using App Insights. That's the biggest answer there. And we are continuing to do some more work with like Azure Monitor integration and other things that will make some of the other dashboarding technologies, whether it's Azure Monitor or OMS, so that you can kind of choose your one source of truth to monitor the health. So with that, now the questions are taco or burrito. I think we've exhausted.
Yeah, I think we had enough commercial breaks this time.
Now we could.
Let's finish on that.
Taco.
What's your birthday lunch?
I was interestingly enough, Max. So my wife texted me yesterday and she said, "Do you want to have anything for dinner on your birthday?" And I had two choices that I gave her. One was there's a place in Seattle and Portland called Yum Cafe. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I haven't.
They have what's called Yum Bowls. Whenever I'm downtown for like a build, I always go there for like lunch every single day.
Oh.
It's like a rice bowl with a really yummy kind of curry sauce on it. So I was like either Yum Bowls or tacos. So those are my two. Like I'm all for the tacos. So Max, for my birthday, I have a feeling because my wife's not going to want to put together Yum Bowls. It's a pain in the butt to cook. I'll probably be having tacos tonight.
Nice, cool.
I know. That's it.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining. Mark your calendars for next month. I meant to schedule in advance. Next month will be interesting because there is the Thanksgiving holiday. I'll be traveling at the DevOps conference, so I'll land on a date in the next week or so for this next webcast. But if you just subscribe to the channel, opt in for alerts or follow us on Twitter. We'll make sure to let you know when the next one of these is happening, and we'll share some of the announcements from things like Connect, DevOps, and serverless days at that one.
Cool, yeah, and what we can do too is if we have we can do one if people have interest as we do our planning and stuff. We can do a little bit of sort of just share a little bit on the roadmap if people are interested.
For sure,
just so they know the things that we're going to be investing on.
Yep. So we'll do more community highlights next month. So let us know if there's anything that you want us to highlight. We should go over some of the roadmap, some of the things coming up, and what's new. So thanks again, everyone, so much, and have a great rest of your day.